Okay, so we're starting this year in Likutei Moharan. We're holding here at the end of Torah Vav in Likutei Moharan. And here's just going to be the sum up from Rebbe Nusen. Nachman's Talmud is the one that's recording it. He basically sums up what the Rebbe Nachman was saying in the text itself. So we're holding here in the middle of Torah Vav, in the middle of the very long piece, Zion, which is the last piece in Torah Vav. We're holding by the words of A'atu, which would be in the text that I have, the usual text. It's on page Zion Umid Bais, at the very bottom of the left column, or close to the bottom of the left column, it says Va'atu in bold letters. So he says Va'atu boy v'rai v'huven. So come and see and understand. Eich kol kavunis hanal meremuzim v'nalumim derech nifle v'noyrim ha'oil b'toich ha'toira hanal. So look, you'll see here how amazingly these concepts that we talked about, and we'll sort of chazer them as we go on, because he'll mention all the concepts. So how these things are how you see these things in the Torah. So he says, somebody that wants to do tshiva, he has to do two types of, he has to have two types of bekiyas, two types of knowledge. He has to be buki in retzoy, in running, and buki b'shoiv, in returning. I'm going to explain. She bechinas ayil v'nufik, which is, like Rabbi Nachman said, the same thing as when the Zohar talks about people who are ayil v'nufik, who go up, who go in and come out. And that's the same bechina. In usak shemayim shamatu, if you look in the heavens, Hashem is there. Shebuki b'ritzoy, that's the idea of running. Batzia she'oil, and if I go down to Gehenna, hinaychel, there you are, Hashem. Shebechinas buki b'shoiv, that's the idea of returning. Kamavoy le'alai and sham. But perish apushti, the push explanation of what Nachman was saying with this whole concept is, because Nachman didn't elaborate what it means to be buki in running and buki in returning, which is somehow connected to moving up to the heavens or falling down to Gehenna. Right? Nachman just said those words. We sort of explained it, but here Ibn Nusen explains it in detail. Someone wants to go in the ways of tshiva. He has to belt himself, gartle himself. In other words, strengthen himself. Right? She is chazak atzma b'darkei Hashem tumah, to always be strengthening himself in his avodas Hashem. Bain ba'aliyah, bain berida, both with the idea of aliyah, of going up in avodas Hashem, and both with the idea of yerid, of going down in avodas Hashem. Now, what does that mean? So he explains. Shem b'chinas emusak shemayim etziyah v'shoel v'chile. Haine bain sheyizke le'aizeh aliyah le'aizeh madraiga gedolah. So whether he goes up in madraiga, he moves on to a higher level, right? Afal pikain al yamacham, he shouldn't stay there. Lo yistapek atzmai, because I shouldn't wonder, well, should I stay here or should I do more? He has to be very, very knowledgeable about this. To know, and to believe, he has to keep moving and moving up. That's the idea of being knowledgeable about running. Right? Which is the idea of entering the palace, so to speak. Which is the idea of, when I move up to the heavens, there you are, Hashem. In other words, what he's saying is, this idea of being knowledgeable about growing is to never think you ever have to stop growing, right? It's something we've talked about many times, because anytime if a person is staying on the same level he was on, in any middah, in chesed, in Torah, in tefillah, whatever it is, if he's staying on the same level, then he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. Because the whole avodah is to keep moving up more and more and more and more. The avodah is an infinite avodah, like we've said many times, right? That even when Mashiach comes, it's not the end of avodah, it's just a different avodah, but the avodah is going to keep going. Because the goal is, like we said, Kadoshim Ti, it says in Pusik, you should be holy, Kikudash Ani, just like I, Hashem, am holy. The idea is the person has to keep moving until he gets to the level of Hashem. And of course, you can never get to that level because Hashem is infinite. So the idea is Yiddishkeit and life and existence is not about, it's not about an end goal. There is no end goal. It's about the process. It's a process. It's a verb. Life is a verb, right? We're human beings. Being is a verb, right? We're not a noun, we're a verb. You have to keep moving and moving and moving and growing and growing and growing, right? And that's the avoider. Now, of course, it has to be done. This is just my own little side point, which I mentioned also when we were learning this in the Torah itself, has to be done in an intelligent way. The person tries to grab 100 different levels at once. You know, he's not ready for something and he jumps into something new and it's too much for him. Then he has to know how to do it gently and softly, right? Not too extreme, because that just causes a person to burn out and to have anxiety. Like I'll tell you with myself, like I once realized, I started thinking about myself, and I found that I absolutely get super anxious on Erev Pesach and on Erev Yom Kippur. So I was wondering why. Those are supposed to be like some of the holiest days. Why do I get so anxious? So I saw, because Erev Pesach, were, you know, Bedikas Chometz, and then Sreifas Chometz has to be done by a certain time, and then there's, you know, preparing the house, getting the house for Pesach, and then there's running off to bake matzahs for 2 hours or more, whatever it is. And I realized, I put too much on my plate, and that's why I'm getting so anxious. Well, the avoida isn't to get anxious on Erev Pesach, so maybe Eli after to skip the matzahs, or to do things before so there's time to do those matzahs in a calm way Erev Pesach. And the same thing is Erev Yom Kippur, right? You get up for tugs, you go to Kapuras, and you go daven, and then there you have to eat 2 sidas, and in between those sidas you have to get everything ready for Yom Kippur. You have to find your kittel, you have to find your gartel, and so on and so. So I was putting too much on my plate, right? So a person has to be sensitive to himself, and if he sees, why am I getting so stressed out about X, davening, tefillin, whatever it is? Why am I getting so stressed out about it? I might be doing it too intensely for myself. And Yiddishkeit is not about being anxious. And if someone's getting anxious from Yiddishkeit, then he's not doing it the right way. And think of how to sort of relax and press back a little bit, let go a little bit, to be able to have simcha in his way. This is Hashem. So it's important to know how to do it, but the idea is a person should always be growing. So let's say, I'll say, now I'm on this level that I get so stressed out that I can't go bake matzah Erev Pesach because it gets me too stressed out. Okay, so that's this year, but the goal isn't going to be never ever to bake matzahs, right? It's going to be, well, maybe next year I'll be able to do it. I should be able to be moving up and seeing that I'm making progress, organizing my time better, and so on and so forth, and everything, right? A person has a hard time davening with minyan because it's so early, right? Here I have 1 minyan here at my on my block, which is 8 o'clock. Okay, so 8 o'clock isn't that early for some people, but considering that I have this crazy sleep schedule, I go to sleep very late, so it's very challenging for me, right? So the idea is, I missed minyan today, maybe I have to daven b'yechidus. Okay, but tomorrow I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try and manage my time better tonight, be able to have enough rest, and tomorrow I'll be able to daven. Right? The whole idea is to always try to keep growing and never being satisfied with where you are. Okay, so that's the idea. But then he says, the same thing was with the opposite. That even if a person falls, chas v'shulam, to a low place, and even if he falls to the lowest level, he falls to shol tachtas, someone who thought he was on a high level suddenly did something that he feels very, very guilty about and very bad about, right? So here's where some people get into atzvus. Okay, I messed that up, so let's drop more. I'd like this famous story with Noida B'Yehida. They had one of his talmidim that went off the derech, and this talmid eventually became a Christian priest. And Noida B'Yehida wanted to know what happened to him. So he one time fearlessly came over to this priest in the middle of his procession through the street and asked him, like, what happened? So he said, well, there was this one time when I was eating in the yeshiva, or rather, I was in the yeshiva, and they used to eat, it's called in Yiddish Essen Kest, where the buchar in the yeshiva would go and eat suppers and sidas and things with different families. So it was on Pesach, and I was at a certain family, and there was a shiloh with a kegel. They thought there might have been maybe a wheat kernel or something fell into the kegel. He wasn't sure, so he took it to Noida B'Yehida to ask him if it was okay. And Noida B'Yehida said, better to be machmer, not to eat it. But then he was so hungry that he schlepped all in Noida B'Yehida's house, and here was a delicious kegel that he ate a little bit of the kegel. And then suddenly started feeling all guilty and all depressed. Oh, I ate chametz on Pesach, and then that night he didn't say Krishma Shalamita, right? And then the next morning he didn't wash Negelwasser, and then he stopped davening Shachar slowly, and so on and so forth until he dropped everything. And then eventually he was still looking for spirituality, but Yiddishkeit was already like, I messed up totally. There's no way of going back. So then he ended up going to Christianity. But then the Rebbe told him that wasn't even such a serious shaila with that kikul. It was something that I said it's better not to eat it. You didn't do anything wrong, right? But because of that, because that one little thing can be the start of a downward spiral. Because that's what the Yetzer Hara does. It tells you, oh, you messed up one thing. Okay, so you're not a good Jew. If you're not a good Jew, you don't have to do that either, and so on and so forth. And either that or a person gets into depression. Oh, I'm such a terrible person, such a terrible Jew, right? But the idea is that even if a person fell to a terrible level, even to Shul Tachlis fell into Gehenna, he did an Isser Deraisa, he did an Isser Skila, whatever it is. He was Mechal Shabbos, he had a Nisayan, he was Mechal Shabbos, whatever it was. Gam kan alis yash atzmai le'olam. He should never ever give up on himself, and and
Rabbi, what pasuk are you on?
So what we're holding in the middle of Torah Vav in Likutei Moharan, and we're in the middle of the piece Zion inside Torah Vav, and it's a long piece. So it's roughly in the middle of that piece, a little bit past the middle. It would be in like the regular Likutei Moharan, which I have like this print, if you can see it. That's like the regular print. It's on page Ches Omid Aleph, on the first column at the very top of the line, where it starts with Shipol Afila L'Shol Tachtis. He even falls into Shol Tachtis. He even falls into Gehenna. Gam Ken Lo Yisyayish Atzmei L'Olam. He should never give up on himself. You should never think, oh, I fell and now it's over and done with. V'tumad yichapesh v'yivakesh as Hashem is Baruch. He should always be searching and asking Hashem. V'yichazek atzmei and should strengthen himself b'kol mokum shehi, in every place that he is, b'chol ma sheyuchel, and everything that he's able to do. Ki gam b'shol tachlis, even in Gehenna, nimtza Hashem is Baruch. Right? This is similar to Philip ben Nesturas. Philip ben Hastura, nimtza Hashem is Baruch. Right? I think it's also Lushon from Nachman. But here is that even in Gehenna you find Hashem. Hashem's everywhere, right? Because everything that exists is Hashem. So even the lowest place, even in the street, even in an appropriate place, right? Hashem is there, right? So the idea is that Hashem's everywhere, and you can always connect to Hashem wherever you are, and whatever level you're on. Even on that low level that the person fell to, he can still over there find Hashem and attach to Hashem. That's what it means in the Pusik, where it says, even when I go down to Gehenna, there you are. That's the idea of knowing about returning. So a person has to know about rising and know that he has to keep rising, and also know about falling and know that if he falls, it's not the end of the world, and he can still get back up. And Adarab, like the chassidus talk about it, that when a person falls sometimes, the reason is to be able to pick up nitzotzes from those low places, right? So there's not only is he, when he does tshiva and he returns to where he was, he doesn't just return to where he was, but he ends up being even higher, because with that tshiva he elevates all those nitzotzes that were there in whichever place that he fell to, right? So literally, like the way the Rashash says it, there are no yeridas. It's not just yerida l'tzorech aliyah. There is no yerida. Of course, if a person doesn't do tshiva, then we have a problem. But even then, at the end, Hashem will work it out. In the sense, even if a person doesn't do tshiva, okay, so then he'll have Gehenna, and he'll have Kapura and Gehenna, and with that he'll be mal those nitzotzes. Like there's no way out of it. Everything will come to tikkun at the end, whether they want it, whether they like it or not. The best way to do it is to do it the proper way, to do tshiva, and to reconnect, and not let yourself get down by the fact that you made a mistake, because everyone's human, everyone makes mistakes. Everybody, even the biggest tzaddik, can make mistakes. Moshe Rabbeinu made mistakes, right? So that's the idea. So he says, so he says, a person can't really do tshiva properly if he doesn't have that frame of knowing about going up, and knowing about going down. In the sense that a person, like the Rebbe Nachman said, when a person falls, okay, so now what's the avoided now? The avoided now is to do tshiva and to move on, right? And if a person isn't falling, but staying on that same level, Rebbe Nachman said before, there is a tshiva to do on that too. There's a tshiva to say, oh, I haven't been growing recently. I have to do tshiva on that, and now I have to really start growing. So that's the idea. Medaktik Rabbi Nizal, and the Rebbe Nachman was medaik on this. Bekura Inyan Zay Belusha and Buki, and he called this expression of Buki Bekiyas, like proficiency or knowledge, right? He Bekiyas Gudel, because it really takes a lot of knowledge, right? Ma'oid ma'oid. She is keliaida, that another person should know. Liyigaya atzmai litroyach b'avodas Hashem tumah. The person has to keep. He has to have that knowledge to keep pushing himself in avodas Hashem constantly, right? Pushing himself, whether it's that he's not rising or whether he fell and he has to get back up. Either way, right? So it takes a certain type of knowledge. Because some people think, oh, okay, I'm keeping taig mitzvahs and I'm following basically what it says in Shulchan Aruch. Yes, I have a few problems, but it's okay, right? So the idea is it's okay for this second, but the next second you have to be higher, right? So the idea is that, you know, be happy with what you have, but always want more. And that's really the sum of the entire Avodas Hashem. Be happy with what you have, but always want more and always want to grow and see how you can grow. So he says, "V'litzva is b'chol eis." You should always be looking every second lahagia lemadraiga gavoya yoser to get to a higher level. V'afal pi kain, and even so, al yipol misham dover. He should try not to fall in anything that he does. Even if he does fall, right? Afal pi kain, even so, al yipol bedato. His mind shouldn't fall at all. His mind shouldn't fall. In the sense that, okay, I didn't avira. I made a mistake. I did something I wasn't supposed to do. But I'm not going to let that break my mind. I'm not going to let that break my connection to Hashem. My connection to Hashem is not broken. Now I just have to move back up, get back to where I am. What's the avoida now? Right? You know, when you have an expensive glass vase, and the avoida is not to break it. And it fell. Okay, it broke. So what's the avoida now? To cry about it or to clean it up and make sure no one gets hurt, right? So always look at it just what's the avoida now in this situation. Don't dwell on the past. Don't dwell on what happened. What do I do from here and on? That should always be the question. To be in the moment, to be present, to be mindful. Yeah. Okay. So he says, so according to this, you can understand this idea of the kavunas of Elul. So this is going back to what he said before in the last, we discussed in the last year. But here he kind of chazers a little bit. He brought down that some of the kavunas of the Rizal in Shar Riach Kodesh on Chodesh Elul has some remuzim to this idea. Because since the whole idea here is the idea of Tshiva, and Tshiva is very nagai to Chodesh Elul, so because of that, these things intersect and overlap. So he says, Kibuki, Yibechinas Shem Yaboy Kanal. The word Buki is Yidbai's Kif, which is that Shem Yaboy, which is Havai and Elikim together, which is one of the Shemas that you see in Sifrei Kabbalah. She oisis Buki, it's the same oisis as Buki. V'zeisha Zoike Lishnaya Bekiyas Hanal, Shehem, Baispum and Buki. And these two Bekiyas, right? Buki B'rutzai, Buki B'shoiv, are 2 times Buki, right? Haini Buki B'rutzai, Buki B'shoiv. Because Buki times 2 is Gematria Derech. So the idea of the Derech HaTshiva is to have these 2 Bekiyas, to have these 2 concepts, right? Ki Baispum Buki, Shehem Bechinas, Baispum Yaboy Kanal, it's 2 times Yaboy. Or the Gematria Derech Kanal, that comes out the Gematria Derech. Ki al pi hakavunas, that through these kavunas of Elul, Nasa se haderech, the Bechinas Segol, the Kesa, V'chirik, the Sag. So like we mentioned that the Rizal brings a kavuna on the word derech because he brings the pusik anoisen b'yam derech. He says that goes on Elul, and the Rizal said over there that one of the kavunas to have over there is to visualize the Shem Sag or Ksa first of all, which Ksa is the Shem Ekia spelled out with Yidin. So it's Aleph Lamed Pai Ka Yid Yid Vuv Dalet Kayid. Right, so that's Ksa. And that you should visualize with all segels. Segels under each ois. And then he says to visualize Sag, which is the Hashem Havai spelled out Yid Vuv Dalet Kayid, Vuv Aleph Vuv Kayid. And that you'd also that you visualize with Chiriks. And that Shembe Gematria by Swami Abek. And those Nikidas will be Gematria, also Gematria Derech, because each segel is Gematria 30, because each little dot, a segel is 3 dots. Each dot is a Yid. So a Yid is Gematria 10. So each segel is Gematria 30. And then a Chirik is just 1 dot. So 1 Yid is Gematria 10. So if you add up all those segels and all those Chiriks under the Ksan, under the Sag, you will get the Gematria of Derech also. Or close to it anyway. So that's the idea. Right, so he says, right, so he says, "V'zei atzma is soid b'chinas shnai b'kiyas hanal," and that itself is these 2 b'kiyas going up and not going down. Kebuki b'ritzoi she b'chinas Isaac shemayim ze b'chinas segel diksa. That's the idea of the segel. Ki Isaac oisis ksa, because look, because it says in the pusik, not Isaac, im usak shemayim shamatu. Right, if I dwell in the heavens, I investigate the heavens. There you are. So usak is aleph samach kiv. That's the same as Hashem Ksa, Kiv Samach Aleph, which is the Ek is spelled out like that with Yidden, like I said. Buki B'Shoiv, and then the Buki B'Shoiv, Shebechinas Vatzia Shol Eneko, if I go down to Gehenim, there you are. Shebechinas Chirik the Sag, that's the Chirik under the Shem Sag. Why? Because the idea is that the Chirik is below the Oisius. Right? So that's going to be the idea of this idea of falling below. And he says, Melushin al tisig gvil oilam, don't disrupt the boundary of the world. Tisig is from an expression of sag, right, which is that with that Shem Havaya. Shebechinas Shem Maisig Gvila v'machzir la'choirav. That's the idea of being masig gvil, of going over a boundary, right, which is what happens which is basically the idea of doing a chet. You went over the boundary that you're supposed to have, right? So that's like the falling down to Gehenna. Then you have to just get back. And that's how you read the Shehudam Nufel Chaz V'Shulam and Madrigusa. A person Chaz V'Shulam sometimes falls from his Madraiga. He nusig Achoy Chaz V'Shulam, then he's like sort of fallen back, right? A person has to strengthen himself. He should never give up. Even there, on that low level he's on, wherever it is, wherever he may be, whatever he may have done, Hashem is there. Like it says that even when Gehenna, there you are. Kisegol do Chama. The Segol represents the Chama, the sun. Which is like we said before, like if you split up the Aleph is a Yid on top, Avuv in the middle, and Yid on the bottom. Right? So the idea of that top Yid of the Aleph, that's the idea of the sun, that's the idea of something that's higher. And that divided into 3 levels, 3 drops. Isaac Shemayim, which is the idea of looking in the heavens, Segol Diksa. She always says Isaac, which is the oasis of Isaac. I'm not exactly sure what he means that the sun divides into 3 drops. I mean, that one Yid that's at the top of the Aleph, that represents the sun, that represents the higher level. I'm not sure what it would mean that divides into 3. Maybe the idea would be that since usually we say that the sun is Bechinas Teferis and the moon is Bechinas Malchus, so Teferis is part of a set of 3 because they have Chesed, Gir, and Teferis. So maybe it would mean that Teferis is clearly the other 2, so therefore it's like 3. That's why it's like a segel, because the setup's like a segel. Chesed on the top right, Vira on the top left, and then Teferis in the bottom middle. Ilai Epsha, that's what he means. But anyway, that's what he says here. And he says, V'chirik, and then that chirik, which is at the bottom, he bechinas nikida tachton shel aleph. That's like the bottom yid of the aleph, right? You have the yid at the top, then the vov, and the yid at the bottom of the aleph, right? So that's that. So that's the idea of the chirik. Shehi bechinas atziyah shalad nekel. That's the idea of even in Gehenna, there you are. She bechinas chirik desag hanal. V'zei shekusav sham lemala b'haTorah hanal. And the words that Rav Nachman said above in the Torah itself, where he said, if someone has these 2 bekiyas of making sure he's always going up and repairing what he has to repair if you fell down, right? If a person does that, then he's able to go in the ways of tshiva. He's going to explain what does that mean. From those 2 times buki, Shem B'chinas Ksav V'Sag, Isaac Shemaim V'Tzir She'ol, Al Dezeh Nasei B'chinas Derech. That way he gets to Derech, because 2 times Buki is Derech. Right? So it's actually amazing. Nachman didn't even clarify this, but this is obviously his intent. That's why Nachman said, someone who has these 2 Bukiyas can go in the Darchei Ad Shiva, because 2 times Buki is Derech. Right? She begamatria baispol and Buki. Shem Ksav V'Sag, B'chili Kanal. The root of the way to get to Shiva is to have these 2 Bekiyas. For us, and then Yemin Hashem Pshita Lekavod Shivu, so then Hashem's hand is always open to receive his Shiva. Yemin begematria der, because Yemin, which is the Yad Yemin, Hashem's right hand, which opens up to receive us and receive our Shiva, is gematria derech. Shiva is Buki, which is the same gematria as 2 times Buki. The Pshita, now as Hashem's hand is open, that's Begematria Segel Diksa, Bechirik Disak. Interesting. The word Pshita is the same Gematria as if you add up all those Segels and all those Chiriks, just 400. Pshita should come out to roughly that. Right, because Shin is 300, then you have, as with the 400. Right? So he says, Shehem Ba'atzman Bechinas Nikid Elyoinav and Nikid Tachtoina, and that's the higher Yid of the Aleph and the lower Yid of the Aleph. Shem Bechinas Mashet Tzrichen Levakash Hashem is Baruch Tumid. That's this idea that we always have to be searching for Hashem all the time, wherever we are. Hain Lamala, Hain Lamata, both above and below. Bechinas Im Usek Shemayim Sham Ato, Vatzir Shalach Haneko. If I go up to the heavens, you're there, and if I go down to Gehenna, you're there. Shem Bechinas Shnaya B'Kiyas Hanal. Those are these 2 levels. If he has these 2 B'Kiyas, these 2 levels, then he's always going to be going in the ways of Shiva. And Hashem's hands open to receive his Shiva. To understand these words well, these words are very deep. So with this we're going to be Mekasher, this Torah, understand everything in this Torah well. Shemash goes b'soy for Inyan, the Kid Yoinav and the Kid Tachton Shel Aleph, but when Reb Nachman mentioned that Aleph, which has a top Yid and a bottom Yid, that itself is these 2 levels he was talking about. Reb Nachman doesn't say this openly, but according to these kavunas, someone who's wise can understand this from himself. And that's what Reb Nachman said, you have to do tshiva on your tshiva, because the person should always be rising. So then when the tshiva that he did yesterday wasn't adequate for what he's holding today. So he has to do tshiva on that tshiva, in a sense. Because the idea of shechting the Yetzirah, of annulling the Yetzirah, you said before, that comes through silence, because you said there's this idea of being silent when people insult you, and that's a siman that you've gotten to tshiva, because that's a siman of humility. Right, so that first shiva that he did originally is only the lower level. That's the first step of shiva, to sort of humble yourself to be able to do shiva the first time. Because all of that is that lower level, that chirik, which is at the bottom of that's the lower yid of the aleph. Buki b'shoiv hanal. With shiva habayis, and the second level of shiva, the higher level of shiva, does shiva on how he did shiva the first time. That's the idea of Olam Haba. That's Hashem's glory, right? That's like the top yid of the Aleph. Keser, which is like the Fi'erich is Keser, because that's rising to what's higher than you. That's the Keser, because the Keser is a crown which is above the head. That's the idea to always rise to what's higher. Moshe, and that's Moshe Rabbani said. Segel, that's the Segel. So all these things are the same thing. To understand this well. Nikshurim, V'nechlulim, Achar Kach, B'yichid, V'kesher, Niflin, Oira, and look how all these words that Rav Nachman said all connect and unite in such a powerful way. And someone who's wise will understand a little bit of this. It says, V'ikar Hadover, the main point is, Shaldesha Udam, Kashe B'madraiga Tachtoina Ma'oit. The main thing is that when a person is on that lowest level, and he fell and he made a mistake, he mechazik himself, he strengthens himself. And he knows and he believes that even on that low level, he still has the opportunity to get out of there, to rise up. That Hashem is even there. בבחינת והציע של הינקו, אזי ממשיך על עצמו הקדישה בשם הקודש הוויה במילי sag. From there he connects to that havaya, that Shem havaya that's spelled out as sag. שבבחינת as kol ha-nesigim ochor mikdeshusoi. Right? So the idea is that even those that have fallen back can still be brought back to the Kedusha. And everything can be raised up so it doesn't fall completely. That's the idea of Buki B'Shoiv. Shazaya B'Kiyas, Ibechinas Im Shem Yaboik HaKodesh, that's Shem Yaboik. Bechinas Shem Sag, which is a Shem Sag. If a person is worthy, so too, if a person is worthy to rise up to a higher level in his avodas Hashem, he shouldn't stop there. He should keep rising higher and higher. Then he gets the kedusha from that level of ekya spelled out with yidden as ksa. The person according to his actions, his chazkisoi, b'avodas Hashem is b'avodusa is burach, that through his actions and through his strengthening himself in the avodas Hashem, can go him liyachad shamis hashamis lamala. He actually causes yichidim in the shamis in Shemayim. His actions here are not just here; they're affecting millions of different, or an infinite number of things on an infinite number of worlds, and they're affecting things in Shemayim. Then he gets HaKadosh upon himself. To understand this well. So he says, this is a really important piece. So we explained before that through this silence, right, that you're quiet when someone offends you, that can allow you to get that level of humility to allow you to do tshiva. Shehi bechinas keser kanal einshon. That's his level of keser. Kisiyag lechachma shtika, because it says that the fence of chachma is silence. So what's the fence of chachma? Chachma is the brain. What's the fence of the brain? Is the skull, right? And then the skull, the galgalta, is bechinas keser. So the keser itself is the siyag lechachma, and that's shtika. That's this idea of silence and humility and bittul. Because on the level of Keser, on that level, everything is one. So the only way to get that level is through bittul, through annulling yourself. As called udam l'chav schis. We have to. This is very important. We have to be very careful, be very, very makpid, to judge every single person l'chav schis, every single person favorably. And it means not even because al pi halacha we don't have to judge everyone favorably. Al pi halacha, only someone who has a cheskas kashrus we have to judge favorably. Someone doesn't have a cheskas kashrus, you don't have to. But Rav Nachman's talking here about a certain type of an avoid, a certain type of a mindset, or Rav Nussin rather, that this mindset will get you is the real key to simcha, is to judge everybody favorably. Because even right, even someone disagrees with you, and someone that embarrasses you, a person has to be done them l'chav schis. You know, maybe he had a bad day today. He's obviously, if he exploded at me, and it seemed to be unreasonable, so I'm obviously not the beginning of that. He obviously was going through a hard time before, and now I was just the last straw, so to speak. I did some little thing that bothered him, and he exploded. But who knows what he had to go through today? Maybe he had to chas shulam, he had to call Atzula, maybe one of his kids got hurt, maybe who knows what? Maybe he lost a tremendous amount of money in business, right? You have to do l'chav schis. And an additional dimension to this, as like we mentioned other times, is also to be aware that regardless of why that person's doing it, but Hashem, in his infinite hashgacha, his infinite wisdom, made it that explosion should be taken out on you. And that was for a reason. So don't blame the guy because he's just a shliach. It's just from Hashem, right? And Hashem wanted you to have this challenge now. Hashem wanted to see how you're going to work with this challenge. And Hashem saw that this challenge is going to be beneficial for your neshama, right? So don't shoot the messenger, right? Hashem's the one that's sending the message. That's what he says. So you have to be done l'chav schis, tzurich l'dainam l'chav schis, v'lishtoik lehem, and to be quiet and not answer them when they're insulting you. And that will get you to the level of keser. Like the Medrash brings down, mushal echad shemutzer as chavayr she oise keser. The Medrash says, brings this in from the Medrash Rabbin Vayikra, where it brings a mushal of a person who found his friend making a crown. Omerlai said to him, Bishvil me, who are you making that crown for? Omerlai said to him, Bishvil melech, I'm making for the king. Omerlai said back to him, Kivin shehila tzorich hamelech, if this is for the king, then call even toiv shetemutzai to vekenibo. We have to any precious jewel that we find, we have to put into it. Just for the king, we have to take this seriously, right? Kach kol echad meYisrael. So to every yid, every person in the Klal Yisrael, he bechinas keser Hashem Yisborach. Every yid is a crown, is a keser for Hashem. But tzurich lahachnes boy, kol min avunim toivas she'efshel limtzai. You know, every Yiddish Hashem is so precious. You should take all your wealth now and stick diamonds into it, so to speak. Right? In other words, every neshama is so precious and so special and so valuable. There's the Haine. What does it mean? How do we stick jewels into Yidden? Right? Haine shetzrichem leishtadl. We have to really do a shtadlis. Lachapesh v'levakesh acher kol tzad schis. We have to seek and investigate and try to find any possible way of making a schis, being lamed schis on this person, to put a jewel into him, so to speak. To look at him, to look be done l'chav schis. Any beautiful thing, any good thing that you can find, put it into every single yid and look at him so positively. And judge everybody favorably. Because every yid is like a crown for Hashem. Because Rizal have it done, because Omri Rizal, like Chazal say, have it done, it's called Udam l'chav schis, judge everybody l'chav schis. I'm just reminded of the story with I can't remember who. It was one of the Literature Gedolim. I think it was one of the Balei Misr, who was once giving a shir, and he said that everything that Hashem created is for a purpose. There's no garbage. Then one of the people in the audience asked a question. Well, what about a krima cup? Krima cup in Yiddish literally means like a crooked head or a twisted head. And but what it usually refers to is someone who twists things. And instead of seeing things the regular way, he sees things in a totally different way, which usually is not so helpful. Like in Gemara, you want to be able to learn with a clear head and not with this twisted head, because then you're going to have all these kashas, all these questions, which aren't necessary. And so in learning Torah, it's only a disadvantage to have a krima cup, right? So he asked this person, why did Hashem create a krima cup? He asked this roof, and the roof told him, Hashem created a krima cup to be done l'chav schis. Twist things as much as you can to be done l'chav schis. Someone's my son just had a story like a few days ago that he almost was actually very scary. He was driving and he almost got hit by a car, and he fell off his bike and he hit his head, and he was lying there, and he said that then a car drove by, and a Yid was in the car, and the car just drove by and didn't stop for him. Then other people that were on the street came out and helped him. But so then he was telling me, like, how could this Yid not stop when he saw what happened? And I told him, well, maybe he's having a baby and to drive his wife to the hospital. It's like yeah, there might be like a 1% chance or 0.1% chance that that's the case, and it would really be called a krima cup to think that that's what was actually happening. But yes, that's what we have to do. We have to totally twist things around and look at things always in the most positive way that we could look at things. So he says, "V'nimtza shaldei shadunim es kol as hakol lechav schis." And through this, they were done everybody lechav schis. Shaldei zei shoiskim loy kishemavazer oisay, and we're silent when a person embarrasses us. When we see in boy schis, and we find a schis in that person himself. Shainer chayev kol kach b'meishem vazer oisay. He's not that guilty in having embarrassed me, because who knows what other situations and circumstances were there in his life. Because the way he's looking at things, through his perspective and through his mindset, it seems to him, it seems to him that he's doing the right thing by embarrassing me. And through that you can You make that yid into a crown, right? Through this silence, so this is like really, really important. It's a big avoida, and it's very important to do this. Just to do your entire status to try to look at things in a positive light. And not only is it simple. I mean, it's not simple practically, but I'm saying it's a simple concept. But it's not just we're not doing it just for Hashem. We're doing it for ourselves too, because thinking negatively and having resentments brings a ton of negative energy into a person's life, and that negative energy is going to cause him anger and anxiety and depression and irritability and all kinds of problems. Why have all that? And if you just look at everything positively, life is just so much easier, right? So it's so even from a psychological perspective, it makes perfect sense to do this. And the truth is, really, really, be'emes, it's my belief, and call me an optimist, but I really believe that most people in the world are good and want to do good. The reason why people don't do good, sometimes do things that aren't good, is either one of three reasons. Either one, they're misguided. They don't know what the good is. It's like someone who will give like $10 million to save the whales. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with saving the whales, but I'm saying maybe it would be better maybe to give that money to tzedakah, right? But so he's misguided. His priorities are he's so into animal rights that he thinks the animals are more important than humans. Okay, so he's misguided. It's not his fault, right? And that's one reason why people do things wrong. And the second reason why people do things wrong is because they're lacking in emotional control. So their emotions get the better of them, and they do things, and they regret it afterwards. Someone that explodes at you, the next day he'll feel bad about it, 100%, right? And the third reason is because they're mentally ill, in the sense that some people might be sociopaths or psychopaths or something. They're lacking something in their mind, and that's why they do something wrong. So in other words, most people really do want to do what's right, I think. And I think there's very few really, really evil people in the world. Very few, if any, right? It's all just misguided or lack of emotional control or with a mental problem. That's the way I look at it. So it just has to be done everywhere with chassidus. We have a few minutes. So I'm thinking let's start Torah Zion. We'll probably just do a little bit, but let's start. So he says here, so now it says at the top here on Torah Zion, it says, Lushan Rabbeinu Zal. So this is now back to Rebbe Nachman's actual Lushan. The last piece was like a parish from Rebbe Nussen. Now this is Rebbe Nachman himself. It says, these are the Meshputim they should place before them, before the Klal Yisrael. So this is Parshas Meshputim. Amri Chazal say, Hishvi ish ish. Chazal say on this, in Gemara and Kedushin, that in this, a lady and a man are the same. So in the sense, these mishputim, all these dinim of lost objects and of damages and so on and so forth, are the same for a man and a woman. And that's why it says, lifnaihem in the plural, means for everybody, for every Jew. Okay, so then it says, V'isa b'mechilta, and the mechilta it says, Yuchel, you could have thought, you might think that Talmidim could learn and not understand. Talmud loimer, Hashem tusim lifnaihem. No, you have to put it in front of them. Arakam lifnaihem, you should prepare it in front of them, kishulchan urich. And this is where Shulchan Aruch gets its name from. Because the idea is the halacha should be presented clearly. In other words, a Rebbe can't say, oh, well, I gave it over. The Talmidim don't understand, that's their problem. The Rebbe has to present it in such a way that they should be able to understand it. If he's not, then he's not doing his obligation in helping those Talmidim, right? So the idea is that it has to be prepared like a set table, like a Shulchan Aruch. Like a set table. You have your fork on one side and your knife on the other side, and so on and so forth. It's set up, right? So that's how the Torah should be presented to the Talmidim. Okay. Now he says Aleph. He says, let's try to finish Aleph, and maybe Bais. So he says, you should know. Kikar HaGulas, the main root of the Gulas. It's really because of a lack of a minna that we're in Gulas. Okay? Like it says in the Pusik, in Shir Hashirim, Tavoi Tashiri Mirosh Amuna, I came and I saw you, I think, I'm not sure, Berosh Amuna, from the head of Amuna, which is from the very same word as Amina. Amina, he bechanas tefillah. So he says that the idea is that the gulas is a lack of Amina. And Amina is connected to tefillah, because think about it, what's tefillah? Why, a person wants money, so he should go in there and get a job, right? Or he should try to do, call up a business advisor to ask him how to run his business better. Why does he go to shul and daven, right? Davening is a simon of a minute. It's a simon that he believes that Hashem exists and that Hashem can help him. So he says, the minute he begins tefillah. When it says in the pasuk, the yud of a minute, it says that his hands were a minute. This is by Moshe Rabbeinu with a Melchemes Amulek. It says v'targim, and the targum is prishin betuli, spread out in prayer. His hands were a minute, says spread out in prayer in the targum. So what it means is that a minute is expression of prayer. Tefillah. And that's what it means. Now that's the idea of nisim, of miracles, which are l'malam teva, above the level of teva. Right? Ki tefillah l'malam teva, because tefillah is higher than the teva. Tefillah is something that is higher than nature. Ki teva mechayev kain, because according to nature, something should be a certain way. But tefillah mishana teva, the tefillah changes the nature. Right? And that's what nes means. What's a miracle? A miracle, by definition, is when something happens that cannot be explained by the regular laws of nature. Even though really on Ba'amkas, everything is a miracle, and there is no nature, because everything is Ashbukas Hashem. Hashem just really designed it to look as if it's working according to certain natural principles. And then you slowly see that it doesn't really work out. Like Newton had a whole perfect system of physics, which seemed to make perfect sense. And then Einstein, these scientists came about and turned the whole thing on its head. And now we know that Newton's physics was just on a very superficial level. The geocentric system, where you look at the Earth in the middle and the sun and all the planets going around the Earth, works out, right? They were able to, with a relative accuracy, to predict where planets would be at certain times and so on and so forth, using the geocentric system. Okay, so it happened to be that science has covered that it's actually heliocentric, right? With the sun in the center. But that old system also worked out, right? But it wasn't necessarily accurate. So the idea is that nature is the idea of things having to be a certain way, and then the idea is that tefillah is something that overrides nature, and that's nes, and that's what a miracle means. And that's what really everything is, right? That everything's a nes. But so the tefillah just sort of makes, that according to the so-called natural laws, a person that has a certain illness has a 95% chance of dying, let's say, right? But then with tefillah, again, tefillah doesn't work. Tefillah is not magic, and if there's a gzaira, there's a gzaira, but it might make a much greater chance the person would survive. Even though all-piece science, you can't explain that. What are those tefillahs doing in that person's body to heal him from his disease, right? But it works because on a level of nes, which is higher than nature, and it works with a minna. For that, you have to have a minna. You have to believe that something new can happen. And Hashem's able to do everything according to His will. So the idea is this is what it says in Sfurim. It talks about the idea of tefillah. That tefillah is, you have to have a minna for the tefillah to work. In the sense that, why is it that if I would daven Mariv today, and I'm going to, Bez Hashem, and daven in my Shmona Esrei and Shemaya Tefillah, have a mind that I want to grow wings, or I want to, win a lottery and have $5 billion or whatever it is. Why is it not going to happen? Why do people not even bother with those tefillahs? Right. So the word is that if you don't have enough a minute that it can happen, then it's not going to happen. The minute is integral to the idea, which is why, since we're not on such a high level of minute, we should ask for things that can happen in a relatively innocent way within nature, because we're holding on such a low level of minute that it will be very hard for us to believe that something can happen that's totally outside of the realm of nature, right? So we should ask for things that we believe in, and that way we'll get them, right? But the idea is, if a person really had true a minna in his tefillah, he could do anything with his tefillah. So that's the idea that a minna is a very basic component of the tefillah. And he says, "Ve'ikar minna b'chinas tefillah B'chinas nisem eina ela be'eretz Yisrael. And the ikr of that idea of that amina and that tefillah, everything is in Eretz Yisrael. He says, "K'mo shekusa," like it says in the pusik, "Shulchan eretz v'ru amina." You know, he he lives in the land, and he what's it called? And he's what's it called? And he's like shepherded by a minna. So he says, "V'sham ikar aliyas tefillas." And Eretz Yisrael is where the tefillas really go up, in the sense that over there there's a closer hashkocha, and people are closer to Hashem in Eretz Yisrael. So over there is where the tefillas have a greater power to go up. Like it says in the pusik, "V'zei shara shemayim," which was said regarding it says that that was the Mukum HaMikdash, right? So the Yaakov said Zeshar Shemayim, because that's the gate of heaven. In Eretz Yisrael is the gate of the heavens. That's where the tefillas can go up better, right? Not though they can't go up in Chitzur, but better. Because of this, Kishapugam Avruam b'ma'aido, when Avram made a mistake, again talking about tzaddikim that make mistakes, right? And he said, "B'ma'aido, how will I know that I'm going to inherit the land?" Avram asked, right? So that question was a problem, because if Hashem told him he'll inherit the land, he'll inherit the land, right? So when Avram did that, there was a pagam there in the minna. Pagam b'irish azuret. So with that, he caused the pagam, he caused damage to his being able to inherit the land. She b'chinas emina, which is emina, b'chinas tefillah. Gulas Mitzrayim. That's why Gulas Mitzrayim happened, because Avram didn't have enough emina. Right? It was a direct result. But Dafka Yaakov Abunav Yordi Mitzrayim was Dafka Yaakov and his children that went down to Mitzrayim. Yehem b'chinas Shnaim Eser Nischuas at Tefillah, because the 12 Shvutim are the 12 Nischuas of Tefillah, the 12 different. We have Nisach Ashkenaz, Nisach Sfard, and Eidos HaMizrach. But really, Bemis, there's more, because even all of those divide into subdivisions, depending on the places where they came from. But the idea is that and the Zohar Kodesh talks about this. There's really 12 Ikar Nischei at Tefillah. Each Shavat had their own Nisach, and each Nisach had its own kavunas, right? So they say that the Nisach, the Sephardi Nisach, the Eidos HaMizrach, is the so-called the right one, because that's what the Rizal daf, and then all the Rizal's kavunas fit with the Eidos HaMizrach. And then our Nisach Sfard was basically just to sort of try to have the best of both worlds, to not have to change our Nisach all the way, but to change Nisach Ashkenaz in the places where there's kavunas that are different in the Eidos HaMizrach, right? But the idea is that they say that one of the happens with the Rizal's Nisach, which is either Eidos HaMizrach or for Ashkenazim, Nisach Sfard, or Nisach Ari, whatever you want to call it, right? That's the way Lubavitch is called, but it's really just a different version of Nisach Sfard, which the Baal Tanya put together. But the idea is that that this is supposed to be something that helps for everyone. Whereas if you're davening Nisach Ashkenaz, you have to really be sure that you're from whatever Shaiva represents Ashkenaz. That's what they say, which is why the Chassidim changed the Nisach. But anyway, the idea is originally there was 12 Nisachos connected to 12 Shvutim. So he says, so the idea of the Shvutim going into Gulas and Mitzrayim is the idea of the Tefillah going into Gulas, because the Tefillah is connected to a minna, and since Avram didn't have enough a minna, he was poigim in the Tefillah, and because of that, Eretz Yisrael, which is Tefillah, that his children have to leave Eretz Yisrael and go to Mitzrayim, into Gulas. That's pretty powerful. So Hashem brought it down to Gulas. In Mitzrayim, he hepech Nisim, and Mitzrayim is the opposite of Nisim. Mitzrayim is very much the idea of Derech HaTeva, K'mashikusav Mitzrayim Nisim Likrusai, where it says by Mitzrayim that in Mitzrayim, Nisim had to come to Mitzrayim. Sha'ain Sham Mokam Nisim, indicating that Mitzrayim is not a place of Nisim. Because even though Mitzrayim was into Kishiv, but Kishiv and Nisim are two very different things. Because Kishiv is trying to exert your power and your control over the world. And it's really a science, because the idea of Kishiv is just that there's certain aspects of the world that science has not yet discovered. Certain energies, there's certain objects that have a certain type of a power, which science has not yet discovered. But it's really just an aspect of the natural world and of science. And if someone can use that, he can have an advantage over others. Just like if someone knows how to build a gun, he can have an advantage over others who only have knives and shields, right? So the idea is always just an idea. The whole kishuv is just b'derech hateva. Whereas Nisim means rising above the Teva, believing in Hashem, and believing that Hashem has the power to change everything. He says, if Ein Sham Mokum Tefillah, so the Mitzrayim is not a place of Tefillah, because it's by definition opposite of Nisim, and Tefillah is Nisim. Like it says in the Pusik, every says copy. Moshe Rabbeinu told Paro, when I leave the city, I'll raise up my hands in Tefillah. He couldn't daven in that city, because in that city was the opposite of Nisim. B'chol Agulias and all of the exiles, Mechinim B'Shem Mitzrayim, all the exiles are called Mitzrayim, Al Shem, Shehem Mitzrayim Yisrael, because they also choke us and make it difficult for us, like Mitzrayim. So since we're lacking a minna, b'tefillah, and we messed up our tefillahs, Eretz Yisrael, so then we messed up Eretz Yisrael, we lost it. We have to go down to Gulas. Okay, I think we're going to stop here. I have to go to Mariv. Tomorrow will be the Sifsei Chayin share. I think I'm going to make it on Sifsei Chayin on Shvius, I think. Look over Yom Tov to have some union of Yom Tov. And then we'll see what happens with the Wednesday share. We'll see if I can give it or not. I might be busy. So we'll see. Okay, so everyone, I get to Nacht, Laila Tov. Have a good night. And we'll see Bez Hashem, some of you tomorrow. Kol Tov.
Good night. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kol Tov, sehr gesund.